This is the Marketing Podcast Network.
Welcome to Uncorking a Story, the podcast that introduces you to the rich world of storytellers who share their personal journeys, creative processes, and the stories behind their stories, one conversation at a time. I'm your host, Mike Carlon, and I'm thrilled to be part of your writing journey. If you're an aspiring writer, a literary enthusiast, or simply someone who believes in the transformative power of words, you've come to the right place. Every week, we'll pop the cork on the world of successful storytellers and give you a healthy pour of inspiration, insight, and empowerment. My mission is to help writers like you realize your full potential through the transformative and therapeutic power of writing. Whether you're just starting your literary voyage or looking to refine your craft, I'm here to provide you with the knowledge, inspiration, and encouragement you need to embark on your own storytelling adventure. So, are you ready to uncork your story and let your creativity flow? Uncorking a Story is about to begin. Sit back, relax, and let the transformative magic of storytelling whisk you away. Welcome to Uncorking a Story. Ann Bancroft is a remarkable two-time breast cancer survivor, making her literary debut at 71. Her novel Almost Family features a rough-around-the-edges, witty heroine who stumbles upon an unlikely found family. This debut balances the existential questions raised by terminal illness with honesty and wry humor, reflecting the power of love to heal and grow us even at the end of life. Welcome to the show, Ann.
Thank you, Mike. So great to be here. Really appreciate it.
I appreciate you coming on, Ann. I'm going to start where I always start with my authors, which is where does your story as an author begin?
Well, I had a career as a journalist. I worked for several newspapers in California, the San Francisco Chronicle, the Oakland Tribune, the Sacramento Bee, and the Associated Press, Wire Service. But I became a fiction writer. I decided to learn to write fiction. After my first bout of cancer, I retired early and, early-ish, and took some fiction writing classes, started with short stories, and then I don't know exactly the point at which I decided to turn it into a novel. I wasn't interested in writing about my own cancer journey, as they call it, but I just didn't think it was that interesting, frankly. But I was interested in the idea of what if my situation had been flipped. And I had a lot of support. I had, good friends, family, insurance, place to live, all of those good things. And but what if instead I was at a really low point in my life? And it started kind of with that the main character is just divorced out of an alcoholic family, gets dumped, at the very worst possible time, but makes these unlikely friends in a support group. And a support group is, as we may have said, the main character is pretty snarky and very closed off. The support group is the last place she ever thought she'd be, but she goes and meets these three very unlikely companions. And the group itself is so bad, it meets them in the Nordstrom employee training room. And it's kind of comically awful, but the three of them hit it off and decide they're going to form their own group so they don't have to sit around and talk about cancer all the time. Instead, can go do some fun things. And in the process, they learn about each other's family issues and help each other solve those issues.
I know you mentioned having a career in journalism. I'm curious, kind of making a pivot to writing fiction, which is obviously, long form. What did you learn about yourself as a writer, kind of making that pivot from journalism to, writing fiction?
Well, craft-wise, I guess I would say the biggest challenge I had was to open up my imagination, to allow myself to make things up, because after, 25 years or more of not being allowed to do that. It was a challenge. But once I got my into my characters, um, you kind of fall in love with your characters, and then I could easily imagine them having conversations, and then I would pick a scene or a spot and imagine that, and um, that was a challenge, but you know, the more I wrote, the easier it was. Of course, I learned that revision is as much a part of writing as or more as the biggest part of writing a novel.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not a very organized. I don't think of myself as a very organized person, and I'm not an outliner. Well, I put it this way: I outline, then I write in a way that does not resemble the outline. So then I change the outline to match what I've written, and imagine where it's going to go next, but kind of goes where it wants to go, and
Well,
then I revise the whole
yeah,
thing.
I love the notion of it going where it wants to go, even when you do outline, because you need to have that freedom and flexibility, because the story, and this is the way that I've written, where I have an idea of where I know the story is going to go.
Mhm.
How it gets there, though, I always leave up to, I don't want to say chance, but I don't want to plot so much that
Right.
that I have handcuffs on.
Hmm.
Because I almost want to discover my story like the reader does, as it's kind of unfolding. And
Yes,
that's where the fun happens for me.
absolutely. Me too. It was just, oh yeah, wow, this is what's going to happen. Um, oh, and then, it's, something I hadn't thought of before until I'm in the process of writing.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah. And then, of course, the flip side of that is having to go back and, when you learn something about a character that you didn't intend, you got to, it can't just come out of thin air. You've got to develop
right.
it, or earlier on. So it does create a
Yeah.
little bit more work, but it's all part of, it's the price you pay, I suppose.
Yes. And it's just what happens for me anyway. And this was a long saga writing this book and getting it published. I will say.
Well,
Um,
tell me a bit more about the saga. What do you mean by a long saga?
well, I had no idea what I was doing when it came to the publishing process. In fact, I didn't even think I would get published. I didn't have any clue about how to go about getting published. I wanted to learn how to write fiction. And as I was writing fiction, I thought, I'm going to go the whole way with this and turn this and write a novel. And I worked with a teacher in a kind of an odd way. I give him, he's a novelist up in Portland and was sort of locally famous. And I just loved him and the way he taught. I met him down in San Diego just at a reading. But I would send him maybe 5, 10 pages, and over Skype, I would read them aloud. I don't think he even read them. But as I was reading aloud, he would stop me and ask a question. He'd say something like, "Okay, what exactly does a curt nod look like?" And I would say, "Oh, I guess I could do better than that." Circle, and then we'd go on, and I'd revise, and most times not, not even, send those back to him. And excuse me. But when I got to the end, ha 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 ha, the first time you get to the end, yay, I'm done. It's so not done. But I got to what I thought was the end. And he said, Great, you're going to send this off to 3 agents." And I said, "No, I'm not. What are you talking about? And he said, "Sure, yeah, I know 3 agents, and I'll say, you're going to send them the book. Please read it." So again, I had no beta readers, I had no editor, nothing that you have to do really. But I didn't realize that. I came from journalism where you write the story in a day, and 4 o'clock you're done, good, bad, or indifferent. That's so. All right, I'll send it off, and the first 2 wisely rejected it. It really, the whole middle was really mushy. Wasn't really about one character. It's kind of about all 3, and so there was no defined arc at the time. But anyway, the third agent was a big time agent in New York. I mean, world's largest literary agency. And I thought, oh, well, they can throw it away as easily as anybody else, you know. And they liked it. They took me as a client.
Wow.
So it was like being plucked from Little League to start with the Giants, kind of. That's what it felt like. But again, did I say, now I better hire an editor or at least work with one? Or, because we didn't do any of that really in the process. I described how we worked. Um, I had no beta readers. Anyway, uh, they said, work a little on the middle because it's kind of mushy, and it absolutely was. Um, but I sent it back like a good journalist, fast, way too fast. Um, and I got really nice rejections. I'm serious. The rejections were all pretty complimentary, but one thing or another didn't work for them. And that's when it became clear to me that, I really needed to talk to somebody who could help me with, you know, building it more tension, making it just a stronger arc, the story arc itself. Um, so I put it in the drawer for a few years, and then somebody told me that San Diego Book Awards had an unpublished novel category. So I thought, okay, I'll dig it out of the drawer, and wow, it does need revising. And I revised some more, and it won that contest. So I thought, well, that's cool. It gave me confidence to go to a writers conference where they have one of these speed dating with agents.
Hmm.
You 15 minutes.
Was that
And
the La Jolla Writers Conference by any chance?
no, it was Southern California Writers
Okay.
Conference, and it's held in San Diego. Um, and the first two, as my book has mature themes, a lot of people are afraid to death of cancer, and do not want to get near it. And so the first thing when you say that its characters have metastatic cancer, not only just cancer. Um, so the first two agents were about 23 years old. It's like, I don't even want to read it, let alone, accept it. The third, though, was uh, much younger than I am, but older, mature woman from another big New York agency. And she was all excited about it. She said, promise me you won't sell it till I get back to New York on the plane. And I thought, oh, I'll tell that whole line of people lining up waiting to buy it, just to hold off. And uh, then I had to tell her the saga I just told you. And she said, oh, well, I can't take it because I'd be giving it to the same publishers and the same people. I said, but I've rewritten, and it's been 4.5 years or whatever, almost 5 years. She said, doesn't matter, just protocol. We don't do that. And I suggest you just, work with an editor, get it exactly how you want it to be, and put it up on Kindle. And I didn't want to do that. So I did work with an editor. That was my pandemic, called it my graduate course in revisions um, project. I had cancer and a recurrence, and I did that whole editing process during the pandemic. And after that, I decided I would go with a hybrid publisher, which is, not vanity and not traditional. It's kind of um, my publisher calls it the state college rather than the Ivies or community college version of publishing. But I went with She Writes Press, and I've had a great experience with them.
Yeah, they do tremendous work. I've been fortunate enough to interview a number of She Writes Press authors on this program, and I know that they, it's a fantastic avenue, and it seems like the perfect solution for you. I'm surprised that first agency in New York didn't have an editor or didn't send it or have you work directly with an editor at that time before they started pitching it to publishers.
I know. I am too. And as I said, they're big time. I guess they had maybe they thought a publisher would take it, and then we'd we'd work on it some more. But And one dad said, "Oh, I know I'm going to kick myself. I know it's going to be published, but I can't right now, whatever." So I kick yourself, you know.
They're kicking themselves now, I'm sure. I'm
There you
sure.
go.
Well, and I would love to, if you're comfortable doing so, just talking about your, your cancer experience, and if you could just
Sure.
kind of walk me back to the first, the first time when you heard those words, that you had cancer. Just paint a picture of what was
Yeah.
kind of going on in your life at the time.
Yeah, well, I was 56, and I was working full time at that time for a few years after my journalism career. I went to the dark side. I was working as communications director for the state school superintendent, and I was a speech writer and I was, wrote op-eds and all of that as well as ran that staff. So I was busy, and I went to get my mammogram, and they found something. They found that's actually not true. That's the second time. I actually found a lump, um, and the mammogram confirmed it. That was the first time. Um, and so it was only stage one, thank goodness, but it was aggressive. It was the most aggressive kind. So I had to do everything they could do, which was surgery. I had two surgeries, then chemo for a couple months, 3 months, and then radiation, 33 treatments. And then, went through what you go through. I lost my hair. Um, I was working through it though. I mean, my boss and colleagues were wonderful. I could take as much time as I needed, but I did work pretty much, with little few days off here and there for when I was really down and out. Um, but after that experience, I decided, it does put life in perspective. And I was convinced, because mine was aggressive, that I had maybe 2 years. I mean, I went to the worst place. I like, uh, Googled all the stats and had my little, you know, document of, here are the odds. And at that point, they did say it was most likely, if it's going to recur, it's going to recur in 2 to 5 years. So I decided I didn't want to work in an windowless office anymore. I wanted to be outside and um, be more creative in my work. And so that's what I did.
Yeah. What helped you kind of get through? You didn't say it, but the phrase that came into my mind was, dark night of the soul. What helped you get through that during that period of time?
Um, I would say, well, certainly friends and my family were very supportive, and we've got a really nice community here. Um, Laughter is always, something that gets me through. And just gratitude for little things, noticing how beautiful the day is, the trees. And you're when you're sick, your life gets closer, more narrow, and but the advantage to that is, wow, this cup is actually very nice. You kind of pay attention more to the things that are right in front of you. And so I felt grateful for small things.
Yeah, those are the little blessings that kind of come
Hmm.
along, helping you realize that, hey, that hummingbird that just flew into the backyard is just
Amazing.
miraculous, right?
Yes, absolutely. And that was one of the things. I would sit in the backyard and look at the birds and the squirrels. And yeah, I was going to say something. Forgot. Anyway.
Yeah, I told you off air. Now that we're on air, I'll have to repeat it for the audience. But my brother lost his battle with cancer last summer, and one thing that I learned from him, just spending time with him, and I'll probably get choked up here, but was exactly what you said, like him finding just joy and beauty in really small things. And it got me
Hmm.
to thinking like those small things are the big things in life.
Yes, exactly that. Exactly that. And I think what people who've never gone through this don't see sometimes one of the reasons not one, sorry, I'm being inarticulate, but one of the points I made in my book, I think, is that when somebody has cancer, that's not all they are. People are so afraid of it. They see you, oh my God, she has cancer, as if you're going to keel over right there in front of them, or it's contagious or something. But, you know, while you have cancer, you also have everything else that's going on in life, and you have your backyard and your friends and the book you're reading, or taking out the trash and cooking dinner, all the things
Yeah.
that are life. And people say, well, what do I say to somebody with cancer? What would you say if you're just dropping by for a cup of coffee? It doesn't have to be all about the cancer. It's
Right. You can't pretend it's not there, but it can't be the
Mhm.
only thing you focus on either, right? It shouldn't be the only thing you focus
Right.
on because that'll, I'm sure, just bring you down even more. It's like, hey, you
Right.
know,
Yeah, and you are not, yes, I have it, but I'm not it. I'm still who I am,
yeah,
good, bad, and indifferent. That's the other thing is cancer does not confer sainthood. Sometimes people, oh, you're so brave and it's so amazing. Well, actually, no, it kind of sucks. I have cancer, but
right. Yeah, you're not a hero necessarily. I mean, people are brave and courageous in choosing to go through the treatments that will, hopefully eradicate it because those
Mhm.
treatments. Yeah, they make you more sick than the cancer does. I mean, the cancer may
Absolutely.
eventually end your life, but those treatments, I have a friend of the family right now who's going through a breast cancer treatment. She has to stay in a hospital because her immune system is so weak. If she picks up, one germ, it could be game over.
Yeah.
So it's that's a reality. But I know that also some people just don't know, what to do, and they almost shy away from interacting with, friends, loved ones who have cancer. And I know that my brother and I'm very close with my sister-in-law. They'll say, it surprised me that so and so stopped coming around. Did
Bailed. Yeah.
did you have that experience as well?
A couple people. And a couple of people were just awkward. Or the thing that just kind of amazed me was the the people who deal with other people's cancer by not just pretending it's not there, but the notion that if you have a positive attitude, put a smile on your face and it'll go away, that drove me crazy, that like it's my fault for being in a bad mood, then that's going to kick the cancer off, something. Um, and all the advice from people who, it's well-meaning, but not necessarily appreciated, like what to eat and what to do and all that.
Right. If
Mm.
you just stop eating sugar and if
Oh
you
yeah,
just cut sugar out of your diet, I think you'll see a big difference. That's one that I hear all the time. I'm like, hey, if you're telling me that I got to go through this and I can't have, those refined carbohydrates that I do love, a plate of pasta or God forbid a lollipop.
in my reading that I do at readings, that the section has is about just that.
Yeah.
I'll read you one sentence. Ever notice I said that the people telling you carpe diem and go ahead with the bucket list are the same people telling you to avoid butter, sugar, wheat, rice, wine, meat, dairy, and anything from a box or can? We're supposed to have beans and kale for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, but then go off and have a ball ziplining in Kauai. I'd rather just have a glass of wine or a burger once in a while and forget about jumping out of a plane.
That's so true. So true. I forgot about the wine. Don't take that away.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah.
So long as it's not a problem in other areas of your life, which I
Yeah,
don't want to be sort of disrespectful for that. But
right.
just please give me
Yeah,
let me have a little Chardonnay every now and then.
yeah, exactly.
What advice would you give somebody? Let's say somebody has just heard those words. So and so you have cancer. How would you counsel them at first as that news is sinking in?
At first, and I've been here with several, patients. At first, yes, it's scary, it's terrifying. I do understand that, and it's hard to absorb even what the doctors are saying. Um, but just know that it's not always going to be as terrifying. It's not always going to be as momentous in your life. This is indeed now momentous. It is indeed, um, you know, but things will change. It doesn't mean that it's necessarily going to get better. I wouldn't say that, but um, you know, you have a lot of support and a lot of love and one foot in front of the next,
Yeah.
and you'll get through the treatment.
Yeah, it sounds like it is a chapter in your life, right? It's a chapter that can't be avoided, but it's not the biggest chapter of the
Hmm.
story that is your life. And, God willing, it's not the final chapter of the story that is your life.
Yeah, yeah. So my recurrence was, 13 years later.
Oh, wow. Because you initially said, 2 to 4 years, I think, was the horizon of recurrence. So did that throw you for a big loop 13 years later?
Absolutely. I had find well, so what I tell people, not maybe immediately after getting diagnosed, but you know, in the process as I worked with breast cancer patients, that you stop being afraid after 2 years. I mean, for a couple of years, at least a year, cancer's the wallpaper. You kind of it is ever present and it's hard to get, there's no getting around it. Um, and the concern about every time you have a cough, it's going to be spread to your lungs. Every time you have a headache, you fear it's, brain metastases. But ultimately, after you go through all of that, um, you you figure out a way to put it in its place. And but they learned later after telling me that the recurrence is most likely 2 years, that my kind of breast cancer very often occurs way down the line, sometimes 2 decades later. So 13 years later, I went to get a mammogram and I was completely feeling great. And I'd stopped thinking about cancer at all. I wasn't freaked out about getting a mammogram. I just, it didn't cross my mind. And yeah, I had a tumor in there. So back we went, say, almost except for the radiation, because you can't do that twice.
Yeah.
I had the same the same treatment. But it was
Wow.
so much easier the second time.
What made it easier? The fact that there's no radiation or
No, I think just having gone through it and knowing that I could get through it, and probably age, I could accept that I'm older as it is. Not that it doesn't matter, but I wasn't working full time. I was in better shape than when I was working. I was going to the gym every day. Um, so it just was. I just I did a strenuous hike right the day before every chemo, if I could, and it turned out I think that made a difference.
yeah. Well, I do want to pivot back to the book because it's not lost on me that you're making a debut as a novelist at 71. So
Mhm.
I'd love for you to just share some encouragement to anybody else who is thinking that who wants to write a book. Maybe it's always been a life stream, but they're letting their, let's say, their seniority in life be an excuse not to start writing. What would you say to them?
I would say absolutely not. Just go for it. You'll have the pleasure of being creative and of learning a new skill and of um, getting lost in that wonderful process. And that really is, I know it sounds hokey, but it's not the outcome, but it is the process of getting to whatever the outcome is. And if you are older, you don't have to make your living doing this. Chances are good luck, because it's very hard to do. But, you don't have to have unrealistic expectations, You can just, the feeling of just getting to the end is fantastic, even if, as I, in my own experience, it wasn't really the end at all. Um, it is never too late to try these things. I was just looking at an article about a 79-year-old uh, doing his first piano recital.
That's
That
wonderful.
was really cool. Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think not having unrealistic expectations is some sage advice, because if you think you're gonna put that book out, whether it's self-published, hybrid, traditionally published, and make a living off of that, it's you may want to rethink that plan. It's like, don't quit your day job just yet, just
But
yet.
when the movie comes out,
When the movie comes out, yeah, because if you're fortunate enough to adapt your own screenplay, which it is a different muscle and a different style of writing altogether.
absolutely. Yeah. I
Um,
mean, yeah.
you might get a few more bucks on selling a screenplay versus the advance you get from a novel, but still,
Right.
I would say don't quit the old day job there.
And I would also say, even if it's not a book, but just writing, just finding a way to go write, whether it's in a class or a workshop. I lead writing workshops every week, and it's mostly older women. They're prompt writing,
Hmm.
and it's to stimulate the creativity and give us starts to new stories if we want to turn them into stories. So that's very satisfying.
Yeah, I love Pride. I just started doing that. I was taking a screenwriting class
Oh,
for
fun.
this is funny, for holiday rom-com screenwriting. So think Hallmark Channel the entire month of December, and everybody in this class. First of all, I'm the only. I'll be crass for a minute. The only person who pees standing up,
Yeah.
um, and the only one. I mean, I'm about to turn 50. But the
Oh, you're
only
so
one
young.
whose age might even begin with a 5. Like, it is not a young person's thing. But we're doing this prompt writing, and I had so much fun. It was such a great exercise, just doing that. And I can actually see, my mother has cognitive impairment. She's going to be 91 in August. But I can totally see, that prompt writing as a way of just exercising your brain. Think about your brain as a muscle and keeping it
Hmm.
active, and maybe combating, what might happen. What happens when we get older. The noggin doesn't
Hmm.
work as well as it used to for many of us, not for all of us, but
Yeah.
for many of us.
Yeah. Right. And it's so exciting to see what happens and what amazing things people come up with in 15 minutes,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
because we'll have a 15-minute prompt and I don't know what I'm going to write, even though I've given the prompt. Nobody knows what they're going to write. And all the feedback is positive because it's like you wouldn't criticize a brand new baby. Um,
Well, you shouldn't. I mean,
you're right, exactly.
there was an episode of Seinfeld I remember where they said a baby looked
Oh,
like Richard Nixon, but
yeah, Churchill.
that's how did you get involved in doing that writing, leading that writing workshop?
Um, Back shortly after I retired again, I went to a couple of workshops. It's called Amherst Writers and Artists. That's the method. Um, I went to a few and I just enjoyed it so much. And I decided, maybe that's something I could do is lead these workshops. So I went and got trained. That was way back in 2015, I think, and just started it in my home, and then I did some down in San Diego through Historical Association. I've tried it a few different ways, but obviously in the pandemic we went on Zoom, and we're still on Zoom because now people are all over the place. When there's somebody in Michigan and Alaska and Northern and Southern California and upstate New York, so it's fun.
Yeah, well, that's great. Well, where can people pick up a copy of Almost Family?
Oh, wherever books are sold. Now, Amazon, of course, Barnes and Noble, and Bookshop, bookshop.org, which is independent bookstores, if you want to buy it online. Hopefully your independent bookstore will carry it in the store, and if they don't, please ask them to. Yeah, it's funny, and it's also on Audible.
Oh, great. Did you do did you read it? Did you narrate it, or?
I didn't, because my voice I didn't think was strong enough. It goes into old lady mode every once in a while, and too often for my comfort. And the narrator's fantastic.
Oh, that's great.
She's great. Yeah.
Yeah, that is a labor of love. I've tried to narrate a book, and I got so frustrated just after the first chapter. I'm like, because I was playing the role of audio engineer and producer and director and reader, and I said, you know what, I'm going to hire somebody to do this, and they did a much better job than I ever could.
So, is that for your book?
Yeah, for one of my books. Yeah,
your books.
They did a bang up job. So.
Yeah.
And then, Ann, if people wanted to get in touch with you, do you have a website or any social media that you might be active on to share with people?
Yeah, I have AnnBancroftAuthor.com, all one word, is my website, and you can sign up on there. I promise not to spam you. I don't write a weekly newsletter or anything, but maybe occasionally, and you can keep up with where I'm going to be. I have an Ann Bancroft author Facebook page and a regular Facebook page, and Instagram. I think I'm Ann Ban 2. I'm still getting into Instagram. I don't know, and I should get onto Book Talk, but I just haven't gone there yet.
I haven't been able to crack that nut.
Yeah,
that's a tough one.
Yeah.
But, yeah. Well, Ann, this was so much fun. Thank you so much for stopping by and letting me uncork your story.
Thank you, Mike. I really appreciate it. Now I'm going to go look up your books.
Thanks for listening to Uncorking a Story. If you'd like more information about today's guest or to find out more about Mike, go to uncorkingastory.com. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, rate, and review us at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Tune in every week to hear Mike Carlon uncork a new story.